Thank you to everybody for being here. When I attended the Casey Trees Conference this summer, I said I thought that trees were magical, and I wasn't kidding. That trees are one of the district's greatest assets, both for their individual beauty and for the benefits they provide to our environment and communities. There's always a new story coming out. People that live around trees have better mental health. More trees in the neighborhood, lower crime. All these different benefits related to trees. So today you'll hear about the district's Sustainable DC plan and our goal to achieve a 40% healthy tree canopy by 2032. And we might be able to do better than that. A goal that drives many of our collective efforts together to plant and maintain our trees. But as the director of the District Department of Energy and Environment, I see trees as more than just a canopy. Recent projections, as we all know, call for hotter summers, more frequent heat waves caused by climate change. And because 43% of our landscape is impervious surface, we already have up to 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding areas in the district. Trees can help keep our city cool. And when I see the maps of the district's heat islands, asthma rates, and median incomes, and disparities that exist across the district, I think about how trees can be part of the solution. After attending last week's climate summit in Paris, the urgency of the need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions is acute. Cities will continue to be at the forefront of implementing innovative solutions to address our global warming. And today's summit is a small but tangible example of cities that take action. 50% of the world's population live in cities. 70% of the greenhouse gases come from cities. To ensure the trees remain a priority at DOEE, I'm proud to announce we are currently recruiting the department's first full-time tree coordinator.
Yay.
So for any of our students and others that are here today, that is, I think, a great opportunity. So if you're interested, get more details at our new online green jobs portal, doee.dc.gov/green pathways. I'm also proud to announce that this week the Department of Energy and Environment and the District Department of Transportation signed a new memorandum of understanding to ensure our representative agencies' tree policy, programs, and planning efforts are coordinated to produce the best results for the district. Thank you, Mike. So today's event will focus on how we can learn from each other and how we can make it easier for our residents and our businesses from all walks of life to understand the benefits of trees. It's about how we can lessen the barriers to planting trees and enable our communities to take ownership of the positive impact they're having on the district. With that, I want to introduce our first speaker. So I've already talked about the role that American U is providing, but it really starts with their leadership. Dr. Kerwin and his wife have made this a high priority, that we are a university that he'll tell a little bit more about what it means, that's designated as an arboretum. And this, again, doesn't just have an impact on the area that they're in, but I think it provides leadership to the rest of us in the city. Dr. Kerwin, thank you.
Thank you, and we're honored that you've decided to gather here today for the summit. We do believe that you've chosen the right location. Indeed, American University has made a very substantial commitment to ensuring that our stewardship of this bit of land that we have been so generously given more than 100 years ago by the Congress of the United States is treated with all the respect, the dignity, and frankly the potential that it has. Let me also say that this goal of 3,000 trees, this collaboration that is being discussed today, is precisely the way those of us who study public policy should be approached. It's a cross-agency effort, it's a public-private effort, and everything we know about the effectiveness of implementation of grand goals has gathered around principles of that sort. You're at a university that was designed, believe it or not, by Frederick Law Olmsted. We didn't build it quite the way he asked. He neglected to provide the budget for it when he designed it. But nonetheless, I think that that tradition has followed through, most recently in the past 25 years, in how we've approached this campus. We are now proud to be in the 12th year of being designated a National Arboretum and Garden. We now have achieved Level 2 status from the Morton Register of Arboreta. That requires not just accomplishing a certain level of activity, but maintaining it. So in maintaining it, we do a number of things. Some extraordinarily labor-intensive, some others that others might think are symbolic. Every day, or every year, we have a campus beautification day where we plant somewhere between, what Mike tells me, 100 and 200 trees. So we're all in on the effort that is being announced and being discussed today. We are an institution that was the first DC campus to achieve the status of Tree Campus USA, and one of only 74 institutions in the United States that year to be given that designation. We are honored, we have been, by the Princeton Review and the Sierra Club as being a national university leader in sustainability. And I think, as many of you learned a year ago, we joined with a couple of local institutions to make the largest purchase of solar power east of the Mississippi. In our effort, following the signing of the 2007 Talwaz Agreement, followed by the 2012 President's commitment, that this university will be carbon neutral by the year 2020. And we are on track to meet that goal. Now, we accomplished that. You know, the great thing about this job is that you get to take credit for work that you really don't do yourself. I'd like to tell you how many of those 200 trees I planted myself, and privately I will. But the fact is that the effort to maintain this campus the way that Tommy just described is led by a number of colleagues who I want to acknowledge. You'll hear from a number of them a little later today, but their work is really absolutely central to this effort. It starts with Vin Harkins, Assistant Vice President for Facilities, Tony Hollinger, who works with Vin, Mark FEIST, Mark Mastrota, Paul Davis, Stephanie DiStefano, and not here today, Greg Wright and Jessica Lubell, who work day in and day out to keep our commitment to keeping this campus a model for what universities in urban areas can accomplish. So let me wish you the absolute best on a day to learn about how to keep a commitment and to reach a goal that I think is a model not just for Washington, D.C., but if every city in the United States approached the work that you're approaching the work today, the United States will continue to be a leader in ensuring that we can maintain a planet that our children and grandchildren can enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kerwin. And, you know, as we just digest all the things that you went over, that is a remarkable story. And to do that also where you're also educating next leaders and people who will help, you know, implement and run the country and other things. It's not just how you manage the property around us, but the leaders that you're developing. That is a remarkable story. We need to give you another round of applause. Thank you. Next, I want to introduce a friend who I had an opportunity to work with for a number of years. And usually at any event like this, the director of an agency comes up and introduces the council member, and it's all pro forma. But since you know, you paid the price of your ticket to come here, I thought I'd tell you a little bit more. I got to know this particular council member over at least an 8-year period, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him than what you'll see in his bio on the Wikipedia. So Charles Allen is not here just for political reasons. He cares deeply about the environment and these issues. Charles is one of the youngest Eagle Scouts ever in his community, and the number of badges that he would have to get
in order to show his environmental bona fides was impressive. And so his education and caring and stewardship started at a young age. I can remember going to Charles's house, and I can't remember why I was behind the house in this little row house in the alley behind it, and he was growing corn. This is someone who really thinks about the urban environment in a way that not everybody else does. Charles also, when I was a council member, brought the idea of trail rangers to me, that he had been in Denver and saw how you can get young people involved in helping to be a part of natural assets and helping support natural assets. And so there's a number of other things that I take full credit for that help make me seem to be a great environmentalist in the city. But so much of that was with Charles's thoughtful leadership, and he has continued that with an amazing, wonderful, thoughtful tree bill that I'm not sure if he's going to talk about today, but this is something that is part of his lifelong leadership and stewardship. Charles, thank you for joining us today.
I'm going to see if I can have Tommy do the introductions every time. That was great. Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me this morning. Dr. Kerwin, thanks for hosting, and I appreciate your remarks. Coming from Ward 6, takes a little bit of time to travel up here, but was just struck actually by how much more work we have to do, frankly, across the city, because this is such a beautiful space. And I'm really glad that Tommy was in Paris, because as we were coming in, watching the cherry blossoms bloom right now concerns me a little bit. So I'm very glad that we have the leadership of Tommy helping for our city, trying to help think through how, as a city, we're a leader in the places where some folks down on Pennsylvania Avenue in a big dome building don't necessarily lead for us on these things, but our cities are leading. And it's one of the things I've been really impressed with Mayor Bowser, with Tommy, and with the whole team has really tried to make a lot of strides in that. And so it's something that we all really appreciate, so thank you. If we're sharing stories, I'll share a little story about Tommy. We did get a wonderful opportunity to work together for a long time. And I may have had some strong and environmental leanings anyway, but it was a real partnership. Tommy pushed me in a lot of the right ways too, and helped open up my thinking to a lot of things. But one of the things that I don't actually have this on my phone, but when Tommy said trees are cool, he really does mean that. He downloaded an app on his phone one time, and it allowed him to take pictures of a leaf, and then it would identify the tree. I don't know if it was crowdsourcing or not, but he would constantly go around testing the accuracy of the app, because he actually knew the species better than the app itself, and he would take pictures. But trees are cool to Tommy, absolutely. So again, I'm very glad to be here, and one of the things I'm certain you're going to hear today many times, a robust urban canopy just improves our quality of life. I am fairly certain that in this room, I do not need to convince anybody that a healthy canopy cleans our air, controls stormwater runoff, lowers energy costs, provides shade, and just beautifies our city and creates a greater space for all of us. The district does have impressive tree cover, but currently we're well below the 50% peak that we saw in the 1950s. And in particular, my good friends at Casey Trees like to needle me about Ward 6 and the work that we still have to do. And we do have a little work to do. Powerful storms sometimes will have a devastating impact on tree loss. And the canopy's also declined, of course, as development has taken place. And we're a period in our city where we're also seeing a lot of development. Ward 6 in particular is not foreign to that idea of what we're seeing take place. And we're seeing a lot of trees, especially those large, beautiful old-growth trees that were lost during those type of development projects. So earlier this year, and I appreciated Tommy mentioning it, I did introduce the Tree Canopy Protection Amendment Act of 2015, which includes a number of actions designed to try to help improve and sustain and grow our tree canopy. Specifically, the bill looks to protect our older, larger trees, reducing the size limit of special trees and increasing the fee for their removal. So if the tree is large enough that special equipment is necessary to remove it, we need to make sure removal isn't done in a cavalier manner. Higher fees and penalties provide a disincentive for unnecessary removals. One of the things we learned in the hearing, which I think had been urban myth up until that point, was how we came up with the circumference of what was a special tree. And it turns out it's just as literally tree hugging, Jim Doherty, it's his wingspan. And so we decided that this was something to take a look at and see how we change it, for anybody who knows Jim. The bill also sets a floor for fees, but also gives the mayor the ability to increase fees by regulation instead of going through the whole legislative process again. As much as I love the sausage making, sometimes it's a good idea to let the mayor be able to have some flexibility, and allows those fees to be adjusted a little bit more easily. The bill also expands the use of the existing tree fund, where these removal fees go, and allows the fund to be used to plant trees beyond the public space and onto district-owned property such as parks and schools and other spaces. The bill amends the Urban Forestry Administration's duties to give DDOT the responsibility to plant and maintain trees on all district property, which will ensure that we plant more trees in more public spaces. And finally, the bill mandates survival checks of replacement trees to ensure successful canopy replacement and help inform future planting decisions. I do believe this bill will provide DDOT with additional authority necessary to expand its restoration efforts of this essential element within our urban landscape. And I don't think she's here, but I do expect that my friend, Councilmember Mary Che, will move the bill out of the committee early in the new year. We'll help ring in 2016. And I think that'll be part of how we help reach our 2032 tree canopy goal of 40%. And I want to also make sure I give a special thanks to Casey Trees and advocates that have really helped shape that bill and help give some really thoughtful input back as well as to how we move that forward. I also want to make sure we give credit where it's due. DDOT's Urban Forestry Administration works very diligently towards this 2032 goal, planting more than 7,000 street trees annually. As well, the Department of Energy and the Environment, which still takes me still getting used to, is DDOT's partner in this effort. Through its shade tree planting program and efforts with our partner Casey Trees, another 4,000 or so trees are added each year. So that's 11 to 12,000 trees every single year through those two efforts, which is phenomenal. And the commitment of our district agencies and our partners make events like today's Tree Summit possible. But even more importantly, they make them meaningful so that we actually have really concrete outcomes. So I expect fresh ideas and strategies to come out of today's discussion. Continue to be a partner with each of you moving forward. And I look forward to being able to listen in myself for a little bit today and find out what other ideas and other initiatives that you want us to carry forward, both working with the district leadership as well as on the council. So thank you all very much, and I appreciate having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And before I introduce the next speaker, I do have to just also, again, acknowledge they are the leader, the standard setter, one of the greatest partners a city could have for all of us, which is Casey Trees and Mark. And if there's any board members, if you'll raise your hand from Casey. Thank you for what you do. Casey Trees also helped bring out our refreshments this morning. So thank you very much to Casey Trees. You support us in a lot of different ways, and they're all ecologically friendly and organically grown right now. So our next speaker that we're going to hear from is a very good friend who I've gotten to know, who runs really the most important department in the city in relationship to trees, especially in the public realm. And there historically had been some confusion or friction between the Department of Energy and Environment and Department of Transportation. And since we had an opportunity for a fresh start, I met with Mr. DORMSJO, and we met at Ted's Bulletin on the Hill, and we talked about this, and he said, no, look, we really will be a good partner. And Tommy, I really care about trees. And I said, but do you really care about trees? Is this, I mean, you got to move cars through here. You got to get a streetcar running eventually. You know, I mean, is trees really a priority? And he said, Tommy, my first name is LEIF. So he has since been true to his name, true to his intention, and we have a great memorandum of understanding so that for our staff and the expectations that the community has of us is now clear, and we're working in concert already. And, you know, already DDOT and other agencies and folks involved are planting between 8,000 and 11,000 trees a year. This extra 3,000 is where the partnerships come in, and trying to get to 15,000 a year so that we get our tree canopy of 40% or more before 2032. But I have to acknowledge the trees that are already going in, the work that DDOT is doing, and again, the new leadership. LEIF, nice to see you, and thank you for coming.
Good You know, I am one of the newer members of the kind of Washington political class, only getting started here in January. And I know that early on I was paying close attention to the way that Tommy Wells handled public speaking engagements. You know, I came in very nervous at most of these events, and so I had a script, and I'm following very closely along the script. And I said to my staff, I really want to mimic Tommy Wells. You know, that open, easy, casual speaking style. It's as if he's not prepared at all. How do I get? How can I capture that? And so instead of actually preparing remarks, now they just kind of give me guidance about the atmospherics that I should try to create. So I think we've gone the other way here. So it just says warm-up crowd with playful icebreakers, suggested topic, Director Wells' recent trip to Paris. So I mean, it is quite interesting. A foreign trip. He comes back, now he's hosting summits. We've got the flags, the seal. The tree treaty has been achieved between DDOT and DOEE. I'm a little surprised we don't have crusty baguettes and an espresso bar, but next time. And it's also great to hear these very revealing stories about Councilmember Allen and Director Wells. Tommy had told me that Charles' affinity for trees was actually a story of redemption. He said that early on, when Charles was a young boy, Tommy confronted him and said, "Charles, did you cut down this cherry tree?" And he acknowledged that he had. He did not tell a lie, and that was the early formation of their partnership and mentorship. It's amazing the historic significance of that moment, really. But in all seriousness, it's great to be here at American University. Thank you, President Kerwin, for hosting us. Thank you very much to Councilmember Allen. We've worked on a number of different issues. We will continue to work together and advance a progressive agenda in the city. Tommy is my favorite director, and I enjoy working with him and respect him a great deal. And so that was a sincere pledge of commitment when we had breakfast, even though you thought just picking up the tab, would ensure my compliance. It was sincere. I'll get you next time. The District of Columbia has earned the title City of Trees, and it's a long-standing commitment. It goes back to LaFont, and our urban forestry team is really motivated by being the custodians of LaFont's commitment to trees and open space and the environment. We try to reaffirm that every day, and are quite proud of the work we do to cultivate public urban forest. It's kind of an odd situation, and catches people off guard that the tree management function is within the Department of Transportation. It's not a natural alliance, but I think it's a perfect fit given the responsibility that we have over the right-of-way and the street, and the fact that oftentimes departments of transportation are really blind to trees and see them as an impediment to all the other things that they do. Certainly when I worked in the city of Baltimore, we didn't have responsibility for the street trees, and therefore we didn't plant many street trees, and we didn't care for them, and we didn't integrate them into our projects as well as we do here. So I think the folks who made that strategic shift and structured the department in the way that we we make trees core to what we do, we're very enlightened. And so we're very proud of that legacy and proud of the things that we have before us. 15,000 new street trees have been planted in the last 2 seasons alone. We install 4 new trees for every one that's removed. So we're really doing a great job when it comes to the trees that can be stocked along the right-of-way. We're about 90%. And so the bill and the expansion of our operations potentially into other public realm is quite exciting for the department, and something that we're completely committed to, and look forward to how we can push the tree canopy numbers from 37% to the goal of 40%. So we're very supportive of the bill, and I hope that there's movement in the early part of next year. One of the very interesting pieces to our program is the integration of technology with tree management. I think we'll get to some of that a little bit later. One of the examples is how the team uses technology and GIS layering to literally recreate the tree canopy in the effort to take enforcement actions and compliance actions against unlawful removal of trees. So it's kind of like a CSI, trees episode when these guys get started, and we've had some very successful enforcement actions, and it shows that this isn't kind of a sleepy part of the Department of Transportation. It's a very cutting edge effort on our part, and something that we're constantly trying to innovate and find new ways of doing things. So I'm very, very proud to be here today. We did sign the tree treaty with Tommy, and that's something that does clearly define the tree management policies, principles, areas of responsibility. I think that clarification will help with the day-to-day management of trees, but also will set the stage for Tommy in his great diplomatic way to bring in more stakeholders to essentially broaden the footprint that we have in terms of our realm of responsibility, so that we can do more and more with each and every year. So with that, I'm just going to close by thanking everyone for participating. I hope you do stay throughout the course of the day. I intend to be here from beginning to end, and we'll really welcome conversations, but also the learning experience of all getting together and sharing our insights and talents and experiences. So thank you very much.
I hear about our directors across the city, and they see that guy had a DDOT. He's so stiff. Does he have a sense of humor? Well, he does. So next, we're going to hear our first presentation this morning, and I'd like to ask Mark FEIST and Mike Mastroda to join us up here from American University. And they are going to talk to us a little bit about how AU became the annual recipient of the Tree Campus USA designation, and to give us an overview of the remarkable sustainability initiatives you've been hearing about from their expert position. You want to join us at the table up here? Are you okay. Very good.
Well, thank you, Director Wells, for that introduction. Very nice. And thank you again for allowing American University to host this very special event. It's a great opportunity for us. One thing I can assure you, as you've probably already figured out, we at American University are tree huggers. No surprise by now, I guess. And so much, in fact, that we did turn our campus into a Arboretum and Gardens back in 2003. It's the entire 84-acre campus. And we really love our trees, from the majesty of their majestic canopies down to their foundations. I can't imagine what our campus would be like if we didn't have trees being a part of it. And it's really on a college campus what happens underneath the shelter of the canopy, all the academic activities, whether it's walking to class, studying, making a new friend, or visiting the campus. Certainly, a university, it's very important to impress prospective students and families when they come to campus. And a study once said that they form their opinion of the university within the first 5 minutes on campus. So that's before they set foot in any building, talk to anyone. And these trees are sending a message to them. They're saying, one, American University has been here a long time. This place is established, it has tradition, it has prestige. In fact, a parent once told me that they really admired the way we took care of our natural resources here on our campus. And that gave them great confidence, he said, that we could also take care of his most important resource, his daughter, that he was going to entrust with us for 4 years. So that's a great message, very strong and powerful message to send out. It's also, it's about the trees today, but it's also on our campus about the gardens and what happens underneath the trees. So we have layers of plantings with shrubs, perennials, ornamental grasses, and things that make a very sophisticated and layered total garden. As Dr. Curran mentioned earlier, I think some of the accolades that have recently happened, we've been rated or ranked as one of the 50 most beautiful campus arboretums in the country. And also one of the top number 4 most beautiful urban campuses in the country. But it's not all about being beautiful. It's also about being sustainable, being green, and teaching those values to our students. Here you can see the Sierra Club ranked us number 2 as the greenest college, and the Princeton Review had us in the top 10. But it hasn't always been this way here at AU. This image goes back to the early 1900s, our first building, Hearst Hall. You can notice the neoclassical architectural style built of solid limestone. And I'm really glad to see that they did plant a few trees in front of the building. But then in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, our campus grew tremendously, very quickly. And you can see that the neoclassical style gave way to a less expensive and certainly probably cheaper and easier way to build. Not much regard was paid to the landscape. Buildings were built all over the place, and they got larger as we went along. And the one common thing you'll see is that there were automobiles. We were very much a commuter campus then, and cars were very important. We had cars all over our main quad. In fact, this is just taken right outside this building. And that, of course, meant we had to have roadways all over the place as well. Our K Spiritual Life Center is kind of the center of our quad and anchors one end of the quad, and this is what it looked like. We had some spaces that students used to tie balloons to trash cans to try to add some color in the landscape. This was the entrance to our campus. There was a parking lot, oftentimes used as a construction staging area, which made it even less welcoming as a visitor coming into our university. Uncomfortable benches lined up with less than attractive landscapes. We had trees, but it was what happened underneath the trees. There was erosion. There was a lack of use of some of the spaces. So it seems pretty logical that the university needed to be beautified. There was a beautification program that started. That's what brought myself to campus and Mark and many of the rest of us. And we started to make some very impressive transformations. This roadway became a walkway. We didn't need the cars getting to the quad any longer. K Spiritual Life Center took on a new life with glass doors and a garden around it. The balloons went away and made way for roses and things for this plaza, our 9/11 memorial. And my personal favorite, this parking lot, thank goodness, went away and became a very much Olmsted-like green space that now welcomes you to campus. And it's right across from our Welcome Center, so all our prospective students enter the campus this way. The benches were replaced and regrouped so you could actually sit and talk to one another underneath the shade of our trees. And this is another one of my favorites. This eroded ditch is probably the best way to describe it. Became a much more natural looking stream bed. Talking about getting rid of hardscape, this parking lot wasn't needed any longer. It made a lot more sense that it became a new green quad around our residence halls. And this wasted space underneath also became a garden seating area right outside our Department of Economics. So you can see it wasn't only the landscape that changed, but the way students use the landscape changed as well. Here you used to study in the library inside with piles of books around you. Now through the wonders of technology, we can study outside and underneath our tree canopy. What a big difference that makes. Or perched against a rock next to our bioretention basin in this case. So we're starting to see students use the campus more and more, whether it's having a discussion in a group, holding a class on the front steps of K, Spiritual Life, on the lawn, in the former parking lot in this case. It's a great place to take a rest, to be by yourself, get away from it all, or to be in the middle of everything as well. The campus is also used for having fun and recreation, as you can see here. Sometimes it's a great place to hang out, literally in the trees sometimes. And sometimes our students will actually get in the trees. And they're not the only one who enjoy getting up in the trees. As you see, we have lots of wildlife here on campus that also likes hanging out in our trees. Every year we have a new freshman class coming in, smiles on their faces, excited for their 4-year adventure here with us. Their first introduction to the campus is getting to know one another, again, underneath the canopy of our oak trees. As they start their fall semester, they get to experience the wonderful fall color, our cherry grove, the oaks, the dogwoods, crepe myrtles, redbud, maples, oaks again, and of course our native sassafras, which is in the amphitheater, another great tree for fall color. And that goes right into winter. And sometimes, we can use trees to express ourselves. And so students are good at doing that, as well as using, some of just the beautiful winter scenery. Then we come into spring. Again, our cherry trees just make a spectacular impression right on Nebraska Avenue. And that goes right into, whoops, I missed one there. Goes into our tulip and daffodil and magnolias. Spring is just really a special time. I think a lot of the city and neighbors, at least we have positive comments, really enjoy coming to see our campus in the springtime. My daughters tell me this is taking a selfie, is the name when you take a picture of yourself. And undoubtedly it'll go on social media and probably be broadcast, around the globe, and we'll have our cherry trees as the backdrop. So that's a nice, thing. Graduation time comes, and it's another time to really make memories. And again, using our cherry trees this time in the summer, or in May, I guess. And then it is time for graduation, and that's a great time to celebrate out in the Arboretum. We also give a lot of tours. If you remember the movie Field of Dreams, Build It and They Will Come, that really is the case here. We have groups of neighbors that come, as well as, this is actually a group of parents on a tour looking at a rain garden. Different horticultural associations from around the country will come, stop through. Local garden clubs, neighborhood associations, all different types of folks come, and we do love to give tours. So, in fact, we're going to give one today if you want to stick around after 1 o'clock. Sometimes the trees actually come into the classroom and become part of the academic learning experience. In this case, an environmental studies class was doing research projects. This was their final project about stormwater management, water quality, biodiversity, measuring, things like that. Sometimes students step a little bit out of their element and do something that might be a little scary at first and join our beekeeping society. And we also have a number of green roofs. In fact, we've just added 4 new green roofs in the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 months. And we have a total of 14 green roofs on campus. And this is just some images of them. They're all different shapes and sizes. Some are actually at ground level on top of garages. Sometimes we have our faculty, staff, and students help us plant them. This one is actually right outside this building on Nebraska Avenue over top of the garage where many of you probably parked today. And then we have storm filters with new construction, and then they disappear underneath a new garden. But then next to them, in this case, is a bioretention basin. You can see it under construction, and here it is planted. And it's a great place to sit on that rock right next to the bioretention and study outside. So more just images of rain gardens, all different shapes and sizes. And I'm going to turn this over here just a second to Mark FEIST, but first I would like to thank, I know Dr. Curran has left, but it's really through the support of the university administration that we're able to do this. So certainly that's a big thing. Vin Harkins, who was acknowledged earlier, Tony Hollinger, who's here. And also I'd like to recognize Stephanie DeStefano. Stephanie actually just graduated from AU on Wednesday. She's right over here. And that's a big accomplishment. Stephanie is a ISA certified arborist and horticulturist. Also, Paul Davis, a landscape architect, is, I believe, here with us. And back in the back, outside, waving, okay. And also, David Wilson and Michelle Fish, I believe, are maybe back outside too. But it really takes a lot of teamwork to make this happen. And certainly, again, we appreciate you being here. So let me bring Mark up to continue. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mike, for sharing a historic perspective in the development of American University's Arboretum and Gardens. My focus will highlight the operational ingredients needed to build a tree campus and sustainable landscape. The obvious first ingredient is teamwork. Professionals who share the caring for our campus environment. That teamwork's not a new commitment for AU, as evidenced in this 1937 slide of an Arbor Day celebration, which I'm happy to say continues today. Ingredient 2, vision. Case in point, this is our Katzen Art Center just across Massachusetts Avenue. The slide represents the beginning of a recent reforestation project. Over 100 native trees were used and selected for this site. Ingredient 3, strategic goals. Facility management's tied to AU's strategic goal, providing an unsurpassed student experience, acting on our values of social responsibility and service in developing student pride, a student culture to live and learn in the midst of AU's Arboretum and Garden. These ingredients come together nicely as applied to our reforestation project. We also learned over the years about partnerships, mentioned earlier, how important they are. We participate in ArbNet. Dr. Kerwin mentioned earlier we're an accredited Level 2 Arboretum. We also host something called Campus Beautification Day every year. That's where 300 to 400 volunteers join us in the Arboretum for a community building day. A lot of logistics. Even coordinating the shovels for 300 to 400 people is quite a feat. And there's the shovels at work. All that hard work does not go unrewarded. We host a barbecue at lunchtime, and we have an awards ceremony in our amphitheater for building that team and congratulating everyone for their hard work. We have other partners. Casey Tree. This represents a work day where we planted donated trees. We also invite in local high schools. In this case, it's the Poolsville High School Global Ecology Studies program. This really was a popular event, so the school provides this on a yearly basis now. We even recruit the youngest of our population on campus from our Child Development Center. Indeed, future tree huggers. Another organization, the Cherry Blossom Festival, donated some flowering cherries to the campus. And we also have private donations from the AU community. In this case, a grove of flowering cherries underplanted with perennials. This year, we partnered with the Black Student Alliance in coordinating their planting of the Unity Tree. Single donations of specimen trees are also quite popular on campus. Quite a operation bringing in the large equipment, but yet again, that gives us an opportunity to engage the students. One of my favorite slides, this basically is the insurance of Canopy at American University, representing a recent scarlet oak just planted under the shade, practically, of our largest, oldest tree on campus, also a scarlet oak. And I think most of you know the scarlet oak is the official tree of Washington, D.C. We also participate, as mentioned earlier, with Tree Campus USA. It was developed by the National Arbor Day Foundation. And last but not least, we partner with the District of Columbia Urban Forestry Office. This slide shows Earl Euster presenting Dr. Kerwin with a 6-year Tree Campus USA Achievement Award. I want to close today with an excerpt from Adrian Higgins' Washington Post article entitled "American University's Rejuvenated Landscape." Trees are the teachers of the plant kingdom. They teach us the virtues of planning, patience, and the idea that we can improve planet Earth in our lifetime and beyond. In a period of deep concern about the future health of the planet, surrounding students with beautiful trees seems an enlightened step to take. These young men and women may not know the tree by name, but they surely feel the plant's nurturing spirit. To borrow from an Irish proverb, we live in each other's shelter. Thank you.
Mark and Mike, that was truly a remarkable story. And don't sit down yet. That I think that what's powerful is what you show, what's possible. That when you think of how many campuses we have, because we're the seat of government, and then how many universities, but also just other, whether it be elementary schools, anything that has yard, lawn, and landscape, is you show what would be possible. Let's see if the audience has any questions, because I know we represent different parts of the city, but these guys are the experts. Rarely do we have a time to say, how did you do this, or how did you make decisions about that, whether it be cost or anything. Any questions from the audience for these guys? Yes, right here.
I've been an admirer of AU's landscaping for years. I live down Massachusetts Avenue in Bethesda and pass it frequently. So first, how impressed am I? Incredibly. And second, I was wondering, number one, what is the annual budget? And number two, do you use one landscaping firm, many? And who are the primary landscapers who've created this beauty?
Well, that's a good question. We actually get asked that quite often, and a I'll answer the first part about the budget, because that's probably the most complex. There is no annual budget. That's the best way to answer it. Our funding comes through various sources. When we're building a new building, that building will have site work associated with it, so that's one source. Mark mentioned our Campus Beautification Day event every year. That's another source that has a funding budget attached to that event. We also get donations to the Arboretum, so that becomes a funding source as well. And we do have some operations money and maintenance money that sometimes will be spent on landscape-related or site work projects. The second part of your question is, I think, who designs it, who works. It's really, most of the design is done in-house. We have 2 landscape architects on our staff, as well as a team of horticulturists, as Mark showed in his slide. And but for big projects like what's going on right now up at our Tenley campus at the new law school, we will bring in an outside design firm to help us get those big projects done. And we also occasionally bring in local landscape contractors to support our staff as well. So I think that answers your question.
Right here. Hi, my name is Spencer Schecht. I'm with the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, but I'm also an AU grad. I'm curious about the nature of your relationships with the other DC campuses, and if there's some sort of knowledge exchange going on between them.
There is. Do you want to answer that? Yeah.
We really have interfaced with our colleagues through a number of professional organizations that we belong to. One that I could say, Professional Grounds Management Society, has really involved a lot of the universities across the United States, but certainly in this local area. And independent of that, we also, on our own, get together with more of the local schools that are in this area to interface and exchange ideas. The other organizations, I know a few represented here today, the Landscape ASLA, we have the Tree ISA. So again, it's typically done through the professional organizations in our industry. Hopefully that answers at least part of that.
Yeah, actually, I have a follow-up. I'm a landscape architect at Georgetown University, and we do have a bit of an exchange, but I think this is a great opportunity to continue that and to grow that, because I know next to me is somebody from GW, so.
That's great. Thank you for saying that. Another question back here. Yeah.
Sally Parker, I'm with DC Public Schools, and I have a question about donations. And if you get like the grove of trees with the perennials underplanted, that's wonderful. So, but do you sort of work with a partner to get continuing donation to maintain it, or do you fold that into your own inventory? And
We try our best when we do get a donation to make sure that donation does cover ongoing maintenance as well for whatever tree or whatever is being donated. And so we do try to, and we usually work through our development office for a donation like that. So that is very important. Otherwise, it does get absorbed into our budget, which usually doesn't get any dollars added to it unless we're bringing them in. So that's an important question.
You said something that really grabbed my ear. You said within the first 5 minutes, a family or a parent or student makes their decision, and that what you've seen. Do you have any reference to that study? Or it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I can see if somebody walks onto American versus perhaps different campuses, less depth of trees is going to be a fairly simple choice. But do you have any?
There are some studies. In fact, there's a landscape architecture professor, and he's jumped around to a couple different schools out west that actually is studying things like that, how campuses and how landscapes in particular send messages to prospective students and families, and some of what those messages are. There was actually a study done in the 80s, which is still cited oftentimes, that talks really about that. I think that's where they did a big survey nationwide. They even went so far, Mark will like this, that the grounds manager is as important as the dean or the provost when it comes to recruiting new students. So we love that quote, right? But yeah, it is certainly important. That was an APA study. Yeah, APA is another group that did a study. So there's been a few out there.
Final question? Over here, yeah.
My name is Khalil Kettering with the Nature Conservancy. I'm also an AU alum twice, so I'm proud to see the way our funds are being used. You have some really compelling pictures and stories here. I'm wondering how you do monitoring to show the financial value that trees bring to the university, whether it's ecosystem services, saving on energy costs. How you tell that story so that story can be shared as well.
There's several ways I think we do that. In fact, we've actually even debated, we have tree tags on our Arboretum tree tags. We actually thought about it, getting the trees appraised and putting their value right on the tag. So especially I think developers or contractors might pay attention if that tree is worth $300,000 and it's stated right there on the tree. But there are other ways, and Megan is here. She's going to be running one of our workshops later today, but she's our Director of Sustainability. And I know we do a lot of work getting the word out through some of her programs as well. And some of the educational pieces that we mentioned, with tours and things like that, I think are ways. We're looking for other ways to get that word out. One, that we are a campus arboretum. We're here. We're a resource to Washington, D.C., to our neighbors. And it's growing, but even today I met a few of you that said you had no idea AU was an arboretum. So there's still work to be done on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That was quite compelling about what's possible. The next person I want to introduce is someone who also is a graduate from American University, the School of Public Affairs, but also, as I've gotten to know this DC resident, how fiercely proud she is of every facet and bit of our city. That not only being a long-term family in the district, but also someone who really cares about the beauty of Washington, D.C., that understands that we have a remarkable place, not just in terms of a role that we have hosting the nation's capital, but also for our residents. And what that means in terms of everyone, whether you live in the deepest corner of Ward 8 or the most northern corner of Ward 3, that people deserve and want to be able to experience the beauty of what makes Washington, D.C. And that has been a compelling vision, and certainly a vision for us in this team. And so next I would like to introduce to you and call up my boss, my friend, Muriel Bowser, our mayor.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm excited to be here with Tommy Wells, and I like to refer to him now as the global award-winning Tommy Wells. And I am pleased to be here with all of you. And Dr. Kerwin, I want to, of course, thank you for American University's hospitality. And I am always glad to be back on campus. It's been a while since I was here, but the graduate education I received at American University, I call upon often in the work that I have the honor of doing now and being mayor of this beautiful city. I know that Charles Allen was here, and he has also been a fierce advocate on how we protect our environment and also how we work with trees. And our DDOT director, if you haven't gotten a chance to meet him, I do hope that you do. And let me now introduce you to the ride-along mayor. You want to know what a ride-along mayor is? So I realized after about 9 months in office, we've recruited all these great people and we have all this great staff, and I almost got no time to spend with them. We have cabinet meetings, I go on visits, but I didn't have this sustained time to really pick their brains. So I said, well, they're going to ride along with me for a day. So today we have our director of the Department of Corrections, and hopefully you won't ever have to meet him again. Director Faust from our DOC, and he's the ride-along mayor today. So he gets to go with me to all of our fun events and even our not so fun internal meetings, but also necessary ones. So we're starting today talking about trees, and we're going to end the day talking about snow. And hopefully we won't have to see that this winter either, but we'll see. What all of you should be very proud of is you've been a part of making DC a global leader in sustainability. And today's meeting is really well timed on the heels of last week's climate change summit and an agreement. Many people didn't think that the world's nations could come to an agreement, but cities across the globe are committed to a sustainable future. I often get asked, well, you're just a little city, Bowser. What can you do about climate change? And the truth is, as the nation's capital, the capital of America, we must lead and we must show others what we can do. We were one of the first cities to achieve compliance with the International Compact of Mayors. And as I mentioned, we just received the C40 Cities Green Energy Award for a groundbreaking power agreement. And it's no small thing for us to be able to say that we will be able to power DC government buildings with wind and sun and save DC taxpayers $45 million over the next 45 years. So let me congratulate Tommy and all of our folks at DGS for really thinking outside of the box and getting these deals done. I also talked a lot about how we can do things differently or speed up. We have a pretty robust, sustainable DC plan. And it's definitely one of the things that when I became mayor in January, I said I wanted to accept and see how in other ways that we could speed up or change. And our sustainable DC plan established bold goals to reduce greenhouse emissions by 80% by the year 2050. I think, I plan to be around till 2050. And so we're going to make sure that all of the generations that follow us can benefit from those achieving those goals. So what role do trees play? We know, of course, that they reduce prevent storm water from polluting our waterways, cool our sidewalks and roads, filter the air. And they're beautiful, and they provide shade and give our residents an opportunity to come outside and enjoy the surrounding environment. And we're fortunate to live in a green city. I have folks visiting us from across the globe that call on Washington, D.C., and they come to the mayor's office. And one of the things they remark about is how green and really beautiful the city is and all of the different areas where there are parks and trees, and we are certainly grateful for all of our national parks. But we know that if we're not intentional, we will not save or grow our tree canopy. I know all of you have seen the maps of Washington from decades ago and look at the maps of Washington now and know that we have lost too many trees. We are very focused, and Tommy said we have to do more, and we can do more, and this is going to be our commitment. So Canopy 3000, we talked about it yet, Tommy? This is our new initiative to help us get more trees planted across the District of Columbia, an additional 3,000 trees. We pulled together 11 groups to figure out how we can plant 3,000 new trees on private, like American University, and public spaces in 2016, which will help us get to a total of 15,000 trees planted across Washington, D.C. next year. And I want to take a second to recognize all the members of Canopy 3000 who are here. Where are the members of Canopy 3000 who have been working on this project? Please stand and be recognized. And the next thing that I can announce, and it is a great privilege of being mayor, you can write these mayor's orders, and it directs the entire government to get focused. And they know that this directive has my complete attention. And that new order will be to establish the Urban Forestry Advisory Committee. So it takes a lot of groups inside and outside of government to plant and protect trees. And this advisory committee will help us stay focused on that. We can do a better job making sure efforts are synced up, and that's exactly what this committee will help us do. So I'm very confident about these efforts, the new ideas that we'll come up with today. The very able staff that works for DC government, I am really proud. I think you all know I was a ward council member, and I know more about trees than I ever thought I would. And I know the good, that when neighbors say we want more trees and DDOT comes out and plants them. I know the bad of when we have a dead tree and nobody comes to cut it down. I know also the troublesome when we plant new trees and nobody's there to water them. So we know the issues that affect us. And I've just had the honor of working with a great, our tree team. Where's the DDOT tree team? Stand up, tree team. So keep up the great work. And all of those people that just stood up, that means when you see them, I want you to work them really hard. And if there's still something else to do, work them harder. And then when we want to be creative about what we can do with trees around the city, I hope that you're sharing that information with LEIF and with Tommy, so that we can continue to have a great joint effort in protecting and growing the tree canopy in Washington. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor. As you can see, we could not have a greener leader that is championing what we're doing. Leif and I are very well supported, and we know that we have our marching orders, and that we certainly know that we will be held accountable for our tree canopy and making this a great green city. Let me also say that the mayor noted when we were council members. I remember when I was a council member, people would often say, gosh, you know, the National Park Service, they're so difficult to deal with. And sure, we could do all this great stuff, but it's the National Park Service. And I have to say that over this past year, that especially in my role of seeing where we work together and we have shared responsibility, that it can be as intimate as the Park Service owning the river bottom and the district owning the water above it. And that's how close we can be. And so in the wisdom of the National Park Service, they brought in a leader who had worked with the district for a while, in a gentleman, Bob Vogel. And I have to say, Bob, that since your leadership, with your fresh approach, and with certainly the direction you've given to your staff, who we interact with on a daily basis, that this is truly a new day. And it has been not only refreshing, but really exciting about what's possible for the city in this new partnership. And when you think about the National Park Service with, you know, whether it be Grand Canyon or Yellowstone, but now they've got to think about a tight urban area, they have really come forward fast. And so, Bob, I'm really excited that you're here. And I want to thank you for your leadership. And I know that on behalf of the mayor that we really appreciate that you joining our vision and bringing our visions together to make this the most amazing city on the planet. Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Tommy, and good morning. And first, congratulations, Mayor, on your leadership on this initiative and on the district's recent C40 Global Award for Green Energy. You know, that is so well deserved. Tommy and I have a good relationship, and he pushes me a lot. And he called, and his staff, we talked about this summit, and I said, you know, this is such a good thing. Some of you can testify to this, and we just have to be an exciting part of this. And we do believe in trees. We do believe in healthy communities, and we want to do more in planting trees, but we have a bureaucracy. And so people were like, well, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we have to study this further. And I said, well, we have to be a part of this. So I commend the district, and we are proud to be a part of this. I serve as regional director for the National Park Service, and so we manage over 700 park areas in the district, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. And I hope you've probably heard that the National Park Service is turning 100 years old in 2016, in a few weeks. And so in honor of our centennial, I am very pleased to announce the National Park Service will plant 1,000 trees to celebrate 100 years, a leading pledge of support for the Canopy 3000 initiative. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but a healthy, diverse forest is an important driver of economic, environmental, and health benefits for both our two- and four-legged city residents. And so this significant step will help us achieve some of our most critical shared goals, such as reducing stormwater runoff, improving our air quality, and, as Tommy's talked about, restoring the Anacostia River corridor, which we are very committed to working with the district on. The Sustainable DC Plan goal to cover 40% of the city with a healthy tree canopy by 2032 is incredible. As the single largest landholder in the district, we recognize the central role the National Park Service must play in helping achieve these goals. And we are fully committed to working in partnership with the district to achieve these important energy, climate, and environmental goals. DC is continually recognized as one of the nation's greenest cities, quite literally, from Rock Creek Park, which is, as many of you know, is 10 times larger than the size of New York Central Park, to Anacostia Park, which provides vital wetland habitat as well as incredible recreational opportunities. These parks are great examples of how important green space is here in our urban environment. Hemmed in by development, these green spaces serve as a pressure release valve that gives people room to move around. And they also serve, of course, as important natural refuges that protect animal and plant life. Parks are essential. As John Muir said in 1912, everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul alike. As all in this room certainly know, trees are really the unsung natural heroes and caretakers of our planet. They improve water and air quality. Their root systems prevent erosion and reduce stormwater runoff. They cool the air and isolate noise. They truly sustain life. Without the strength, without the shelter, without the life provided by a healthy, connected forest, these places to play in and pray in are truly threatened. So the National Park Service is eager to do what we can, and so we're thrilled to participate as part of the Mayor's new Urban Forestry Advisory Committee, and we stand ready to share our expertise and collaborate as the district works to achieve the Sustainable DC Plan goals. So, Madam Mayor, thank you. We stand with you in strong support of Canopy 3000, and we look forward to continuing the great work of our committed partnership in protecting and preserving a thriving district for this and future generations. Thank you very much.
Wow, we just got to 1/3 of our goal. I feel like a telethon. So it doesn't have to be matched yet, does it? That's however that works. That is You know, I told you that Bob has come in with great enthusiasm to be a great partner. That's quite a commitment. Thank you very much. And with that, I also know that that the shadow mayor and the mayor have commitments, and if and so I know that you'll need to be going soon. But Tom, welcome. When I saw you standing out there, the head of Department of Corrections, I thought, why are you here? And I know you like trees, but so welcome as well. That's great. So with that, I'm going to introduce our keynote speakers, and again, I know that we're kind of moving straight forward. We're not taking a break yet. So, but you guys seem lively and no one's falling asleep, so we're doing well. So our keynote presenters this morning hail from two of our nation's most prestigious institutions. It's part of the benefit of being here in Washington, D.C., from NASA and the Smithsonian Institution. Dr. Zhang earned her PhD at Boston University's Department of Earth and Environment. Her research focuses on vegetation dynamics and their interactions with the climate. Dr. Johnston earned his PhD in Geographical Sciences from the University of Maryland. His research focuses on applying remote sensing techniques to understand environmental and land cover dynamics. So with that, I'd like to welcome them to the front of the room.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for having me here to represent our research here on impact of urbanization on surface climate. Today, I'm going to focus on the role of vegetation, how different type of surfaces respond differently, during the same process. Dr. Lahore Bonova is the PI of this research, and I also want to introduce two important co-authors, Dr. Tommy and Robert Wolf from NASA JSFC Center. During the process of the urbanization, when we're replacing the natural soil and the natural vegetative surface with impervious surface like the roads, the buildings, the parking lots, we're basically changing the characters of the surfaces. And by doing that, we also change the energy balance, which will generate a warmer or a heat island in the urban centers. We also will going to change the surface runoff, especially during the heavy precipitation events. And also by clearing cuts, the trees and the shrubs and getting the new construction, the new communities, we're going to change the carbon sequestration. So these are some general, ideas of how this urbanization will change the balance of energy, the balance of water, the balance of carbon. Our group have been working on the urbanization for, how the urbanization change affects the affects the climate for several years. And here are some findings I would like to share with you. The first one is we find out when we're talking about the urban heat islands, the background ecology matters. Actually play a very important role in determining the UHI, the urban heat islands. In general, the cities building in forested area will have a much significant UHI when compared to cities building in arid or semi-arid regions like desert. Even, if you check the left panel, the desert cities in general, they are warmer, but it's warmer everywhere. But cities building in forests like DC and Baltimore area, which is on the right panel, you could see the UHI is way much more significant. So for cities building in similar background ecology, the size of the city will affect urban heat islands. In general, the UHI is proportionally to the log of the size of city. So or in other words, it's not a surprise. Bigger cities will have bigger urban heat islands. for cities with similar size and building in the similar background biomes, the development patterns matters. So here I gave two examples. One is Providence, which has a much higher density, urban center, but compared to Buffalo, which is tier to the low to medium density urban centers. And at the same time, Providence, the rural area around the Providence, they have way much more tree cover, more than 80% tree cover. But on the other hand, Buffalo is only about 15%. So these two combined together for the UHI is more than 5 degrees difference for these two cities, even they're very similar sizes and similar climate. And for cities building in the same background biomes, they have similar sizes and similar development patterns. For here, we have a pair. One is Syracuse, and the other one is Harrisburg. You could see the distribution of the impervious surface area. They are basically the same. They have almost the identical patterns. However, Syracuse is a more one compact urban center. By comparison, Harrisburg is divided into two parts by the river. So as a result, you can tell that the urban heat island is also different by 3 Celsius degree. So if we can, this is a difference of the shape. If you use this shape parameter to regulate it, you can understand the difference between this. So all these 3 or 4 different matters, I'm just trying to tell you or trying to show that how the urbanization affects the surface climate is a very complex mechanism. It's very hard to find one or several universal rules to understand it. So that inspires our the recent project, which is funded by NASA. We're trying to combine the satellite data we want using the temporal repetitive and also the spatial coverage of the satellite data. We're trying to combine them and using it in land surface model, which is called this symbol biosphere model, divided at NASA GSFC Center. By using this model and the powerful of the satellite data, we're trying to simulate how different kind of surfaces, including the impervious surface, which is the roads, the parking lots, and the buildings, and also different types of trees or shrubs, how they respond differently, even they're within the same incoming solar energy with the similar precipitation amount, and also with the similar air temperature, but they respond differently, and they have at a half an hour or hourly rate. This is a very powerful model. And here are some of our results. Again, we're using the DC and Baltimore area as one example. This is the temperature simulations of with the model. If you want focus on the left bottom corner, this is the diurnal temperature cycle for different land cover surfaces we averaged over the summer, June, July, August. The right line is showing the temperature of the impervious surface, like the roads or buildings. And the green line is the temperature of the deciduous broadleaf trees. So in general, in summer, during the whole 24 hours period, the buildings is always warmer than the trees next to it. And this warm effect is most significant during the noontime, which the temperature difference is almost 5 Celsius degree difference. That's a huge difference. And with the power of the model, we're able to run several different scenarios, for urbanization of the DC region. That is the top panel showing. So the center, the top panel basically is showing if we choose the center of the DC, and then we go out from the center to the surrounding rural area. What is the temperature? When you get this transection, what is the temperature when you go along it? So the black line with the dots on it, that is the current situation. So with right now, the urbanization, help the trees and everything with the current condition, the temperature you get the warmest temperature in the center, and when you go outside, it will decrease. Of course, because you're having less impervious surface area and you have much larger tree covers and larger vegetation percentage. And when the red line is a very extreme scenario, which is, okay, what if the whole area is urbanized? We don't have any trees anymore. So now you basically don't have any urban center anymore. It's like the temperature is always more than 26 Celsius degrees. This is a daily average. This is an average within the 24 hours. So even this looks not hot enough, but think about like adding the midnight and day temperature, that's a huge number. And the green line is another scenario, which is what the temperature will look like before the urbanization. So which is, there's no impervious surface. It's just the natural vegetation with current case. Again, you could tell the temperature will be much lower due to the transpiration effects of the vegetations. So this is the result of the temperature from the energy balance. We also have some, from the water balance, we also modeled or simulate the surface runoff of the United States, and the top maps showing the surface runoff for the impervious surface area, which is on the red panel, which is much larger than the vegetation surfaces, which is on the left panel. Again, here we use Washington, D.C. as an example. If you check the table, for the summer average, for June, July, August, for the same amount of precipitation, the impervious surface area will discharge 3 times of more surface runoff than the deciduous broadleaves. And this is not a surprise because, the physical characterization of the impervious surface. From here, I would also like to point out, we use Atlanta here and just a comparison because Atlanta, this example in Atlanta, we have similar amount of impervious surface, which means we have similar urbanized area and a similar amount of precipitation. But the natural vegetation in Atlanta is mixed for it. So it's not just a broadleaf. It has needleleaf and broadleaf. It's a mixture. And with this mixture, this will reduce even more surface runoff by another 80%. So this is what we want to show or to the public is that when we're talking about the effects of the urbanization or how the vegetation will affect the surface climate, it's not only just the amount of the vegetation, like how many trees or it matters. It's also the type of the vegetation that matters. It's whether it's tall vegetation compared to the shrubs, or even for the trees, they have different types and they work differently with the same amount of climate variables. And finally, this is for the carbon balance. This is a map showing, the carbon lost due to the urbanization for the whole United States. In general, it is about 100 million tons of carbon is lost just due to this urbanization, the replacement, for the natural vegetated surface to this impervious surface. And this is a huge number because this will affect the balance between of the carbon dioxide between the atmosphere and the surface, and this is also will affect the greenhouse effects. Finally, we know the trees are beautiful. They beautify our community, making your backyard prettier or nature-friendly. Also, we would like to get some, take-home points, or they are very helpful in terms of the ecosystem services. At least for these 3 weeks, they can help mitigating the heat. They can reduce the big flashing floods, caused by the heavy precipitation events. They can also sequestration of carbon dioxide, and which in turn will, reduce the greenhouse effects. Well, thanks for your attention. Thank you.
All right, it's my turn. Well, while that recycles, I'd like to thank the folks at AU for hosting. It's been a while since I've been on campus. Last time I was in McKinley Hall there, I was teaching a class, and it's a different world in that building right now. It's all in this brand new building we're in here. Also, I'd like to thank all the leaders here from both DDOT and DOEE. I'm also still getting used to the new acronym, but I've had some great relations with the folks in both units, and they've been really helpful in looking at the past tree cover here. And thanks to all our political leaders as well. I'm from Ward 6 myself, so it's great to see the current and former council members. But so let's focus now on the District of Columbia. Those of us that look at urban areas and try to understand the ecosystems of urban areas, I know a lot of you already understand this, but maybe some don't. There's really been a revolution in how we think about urban areas over the recent decades, where we're trying to understand urban areas as ecosystems, because they do actually function as ecosystems. And so I've actually been involved in some work trying to leverage historical archival satellite imagery to understand what goes on in an urban center like DC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple maps here that show tree cover change through about 20 years time period, looking into the past. So this is a historical context for understanding what's going on now and how we can understand the future tree cover here in DC. After the break that we're going to have now, you're going to see several different map products that zoom into neighborhood scales, so you can see individual property, pieces of property, and even individual trees. What I'm going to show you over the next 10 minutes here is not that. We're not looking at that kind of detail. We're looking at data from a series of satellites called Landsat, which look at things almost the size of a football field. They were never really quite designed to look at how tree cover in an urban center changes through time. But over the recent decades, those of us that use satellite imagery have gotten very clever about how we can best use these kinds of data products to actually understand changes in urban tree cover. Let me teach myself how to use this thing. So there's a map of DC right there. You're going to see a few versions of that. That is a map of tree cover from 0 to 100%. So the dark areas there are areas that don't have much tree cover, like the Potomac River. The bright areas are areas that are densely forested. And so you've got some park units there. That's Rock Creek Park. That's Fort DuPont, and so on and so forth. I'll briefly go over some of the science reasons that we looked at this, but I won't dwell on that because I want to get to some of the implications for near-term thinking. I've already made the upper point, I think. What I've been doing recently is trying to improve methods for looking at the past tree cover change. The dates there, 1984 and 2004, are explained by the source of data that we've got. It's a particular set of satellites that actually look at different wavelengths of light that only became available in 1984. These are not the kinds of methods that I would use for current and future monitoring. We'll get into that after the break. So again, this is here to provide a sort of historical baseline for our discussion this afternoon. I'll talk a little bit about some of the factors related to tree cover changes. Because I'm looking at a relatively coarse scale and we don't always have the data, I can't always point to causal factors. In other words, I can't always say, I know what happened here and I know what happened there. But there are some broad conclusions that can be made. And then I'll make some quick comments about the implications for current and future planning. So here are just a couple maps of the District of Columbia with these. These are maps derived from Landsat data. Again, I'm not going to go into the details here, but these are two different maps of tree cover. For those of you that are really interested in how we actually use satellite imagery, I'm around all day today, and I'd be happy to go into more detail. But on the left is a map of tree cover that was derived from a traditionally used method that we use in the remote sensing community. But those of you that know the city well, and I'm sure that's most of you, I hope, there are some errors. There's Haynes Point right there, which this map shows is heavily treed, which of course we know is not correct. What's at Haynes Point? Golf course, yes. And there are some of these methods that it's easy to confuse tree cover and grass cover when we're looking in urban areas because we're looking at that reflectance pattern that comes from chlorophyll. One of the advantages we have with the more recent Landsat satellites is we actually can use different wavelengths of light that go out into the infrared part of the spectrum that is helpful for discriminating tree and grass cover. And the image on the right shows a more recently developed technique which actually more closely matches the kinds of validation data that we have on the ground. One of the great things about doing science in the District of Columbia, and my fellow geographers that work in other cities are very jealous when I tell them that we have great validation data from aerial photographs down to pixels about that big. Other cities don't have that. So for anybody here from DCGIS, thank you. Is there anybody here from DCGIS? Well, thank you for wherever you are now, because that's one of the data sets that made this kind of work possible, along with data that actually from the folks at Casey Trees and others. And so here's just a map that shows some of the uncertainty that we have when we make tree cover maps. So the map on the left shows the uncertainty. The yellow cover shows where we're underestimating tree cover. The blue shows where we're overestimating tree cover. Using that more traditional technique, you can see we're underestimating tree cover in the center there. That's the U.S. Capitol right there and the National Mall. Okay, we are somewhere about there here at AU. And then the newer technique, which again, I can go in details later if you really want to know, but the error that we see is lower, but more importantly, the error is more consistent across the city. And that allows us to draw some conclusions about comparing one part of the city to another, which is terribly important, of course, for planning purposes. And then we can derive maps like this. So these are maps that show tree cover change from 1984 to 2004 in the District of Columbia. The map on the left shows areas of increase, and the map on the right shows decrease. The colors do not indicate the magnitude of the change, okay? They show the date of the change. Because there's still pretty significant uncertainty when using these historical satellite products, I can't actually tell you that the tree cover went up or down by 1% or 3% in each of those polygons. It's just a map, the areas where they exceed the uncertainty, okay? And the colors indicate the dates. You can see that it's a 2-year time step starting from 1984 to 1986. So if you see that color, that means it's an area of tree cover increase from 2002 to 2004. And the ward boundaries you see on there are not the current ward boundaries. Those are the ward boundaries after the 2000 census. So the charts that I'll show you over the next few minutes here stick with those ward boundaries. We all know that the wards change, but for this analysis, to keep it simple, these are the ward boundaries. Again, just to give you an example that we actually do have the ability to leverage some of these really old satellite image products to actually make some potentially useful maps even for dense urban areas such as DC. So now let's dive in to the city a little bit more specifically. What this slide right here is doing is comparing two different kinds of residential land in the District of Columbia based on the zoning code. So the upper map right here, and those are ward numbers, it's Ward 1 and Ward 6. The gray area that you see right here is shown in these two bars right here, and then this gray area right here, around the flag, sorry, is this part of the chart right there. The way the DC zoning works, at least in residential zones, is you're allowed to fill up each property unit up to a certain proportion with structures. So in the low density residential zones, these are, somebody correct me wrong, this is R3, I believe is the code. R1 is the, okay, yeah, which is probably, you know, I live in R3 here. But you're allowed to fill up to 40% of each of that piece of property with structures. So it's a broad way of of understanding the density of structures in an area. Whereas in these areas, you can fill up to 60% of each property unit with structures. Now, I happen to live in one of these zones, and I can tell you that we have lots of what we call non-conforming lots, because the houses are 100 years old, so we've got 90, up close to 100% of the lot being filled. But just broadly, it's a way of discriminating the sort of higher density residential zones and lower density residential zones. And in those higher density residential zones, the area is required to maintain 40% open space in each property unit. You can see here the gray boxes show the change in tree cover over that 20-year time period. In other words, that's the variability of the tree cover. And then the additional lines show the uncertainty. We can't really discriminate the areas between wards 1 and ward 6. They're about the same. But if we look at that 60% open space zones, some differences do start to come out. If we look at the low density residential zones in wards 3 and 4, the tree values are higher and the variability is higher than, say, in wards 7 and 8. Keep that in mind over the next couple slides. Here's the same different medium density and low density residential zones, and this shows the horizontal axis here is the date, and the vertical axis shows the change in tree cover from a baseline year of 2000. Pick that year at random. And in this case, if you look at the error bars here, all of these changes are within the error bars. So using this technique, I can't really tell you any broad conclusions about what changes in that part of the city. But in our low density residential zones, we do have a period of tree cover loss in the early 1990s, followed by a period of recovery. Now, the causal factors, again, I can't really point to specific things, but we can talk about the impact of things like gypsy moths, which was the peak period of gypsy moth defoliation in the surrounding area. Despite calling lots of old timers in the DC tree business, I haven't been able to find any spatial data on gypsy moth treatment. But if anybody knows anybody, please let me know. And then moving on, I'm not a sociologist or the kind of geographer that looks at how neighborhoods change through times, but I do work with people that do that. And there are some connections that we can make from these satellite maps into to neighborhood changes. You can actually compare it to census data at the census tract scale. And there aren't too many factors that seem to be linked to things like tree cover change, but a couple are. There's the 1984 to 2004, as all of you know, was a period of significant population change here in DC. We had some of these low-density residential zones lost 25% of population from 1980 to 2000. Those areas that had the greater degree of population change and higher amounts of vacant property rates, as defined by the census data, had lower tree cover. Now, again, let's not confuse correlation with causation here, right? There's not a direct link between the change in population and the vacant property rates, but there is some patterns that we notice between tree cover and tree cover change and what's going on in the neighborhoods. And this still needs to be I'm working with a couple folks that do work on the sort of human side of things to understand some of those historical changes and how they might be relevant. You can also make maps of persistent land cover change. So these are two maps that show areas of tree cover change between 84 and 2004. So I know it's really hard to see, but the darker areas, the dark little blobs here, show areas where in 84 to 86, there was not much tree cover. Then by 2004, there was some persistent dense tree cover, as defined by at least 75% tree cover. And then you see there almost 17 hectares. But then areas of loss, tree cover loss. This was surprising. I didn't expect to see. I've made maps of land cover change in the suburban areas, but even in DC, we have had some areas of persistent land cover change, totaling actually 50 hectares for a net loss of about 33. And then don't worry about reading the details here, but just to make the point that we can track where those polygons are of the tree cover change in different wards through time. Actually, and I'll skip ahead to this one here, because this actually shows air photos. So we've got Camp Sins and Henson Ridge. These are two areas that have been redeveloped in Ward 8. These are air photos from 2002 to 2005. This just to give you an example of some of these development processes that do have an impact in tree cover. Now, these are areas that will slowly but surely be reforested through time. When you build these residential spaces, you're going to have more tree cover come up through time. Just to make the case that we can actually use some of these maps to actually show that kind of change. And then I wanted to include this. This is a slightly different look at tree cover change in very fine detail in those residential zones. Using air photos, we can count trees and we can measure the changes in tree sizes, the crown radius. Now, in this first look at it, I wasn't able to actually say much definitive about the tree size because of the lack of resolution, but counting the trees actually between, and this is 95 to 2005, there was an increase in number of trees in these low density residential zones. If you assume that the tree covers don't change in size for a while, that change in number all by itself accounts for 37% of the observed tree canopy change. The reason I put this up here is to make the point that it's not just tree planting. It's tree planting and tree growth through time. So it's planting trees and also maintaining them through time that has an impact that we can even see in some of these historical satellite images. So I'll finish up here. Between 84 and 2004, I'm with these kinds of methods, because there is a level of uncertainty, I'm not able to point to overall trajectory of tree cover gain or loss. But there was variability in those low-density residential zones, which I expect you would find if you looked at other U.S. cities as well. And as I said, there was a period in the early 90s of tree cover decline in those areas, followed by recovery. Again, the third point there, I was surprised to find that land cover change does impact tree cover, even here in D.C. And then the last point about both planting and maintenance are essential to understand. And I'll finish up with 3 more points about future planning. We need to be careful of making valid comparisons when we're using different methods. The methods that I just showed you right here, again, I wouldn't recommend for current and future monitoring. We have much better sources of data right now, and you're going to actually see some of the really high resolution, highly detailed maps that you're going to see in some neighborhood-based scenarios for the discussion we're going to have after the break.